Welcome back, my friends, to the Sweet Spot, where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as in every week, I have my two co-hosts, Howard Holton and Paul Lewis.
Hey there.
So I see a lot of gaming controllers.
Yeah.
I thought that I was a gamer, but wow.
Yeah. So this is my office is kind of becoming my nerd cave to a rather high level. I've got my 3D printers in here. I've got a 9-foot workbench.
Wait, printers? You have more than one?
Yeah, I have 3 printers and a resin curing machine. Yeah, and I'm probably going to add a CNC and a few other fun toys. I then have to add the knowledge necessary to use them, but that's a different story altogether.
It'll be Howard Holton's Printing Limited.
Yeah.
For all of your signage needs.
Yeah, it's junk work. That's my wall of kind of classic gaming handhelds. So I've got some modern controllers, but then in addition to kind of some emulation devices, I've got a classic Game Boy. You can't see it, but there's a Sega Nomad up there. There's a Neo Geo Pocket Color. There's a whole bunch of Nintendo devices.
Are they all worn out, or are they perfectly reasonable, usable now?
Yeah, they all work.
Oh. Nice.
I may not be able to find the charging cable for every one of them.
Right.
But part of the plan for that wall is it actually sits from the wall about an inch, so that I can wire all the chargers in. So,
Nice.
so they should be able to sit on there and be charging at the same time.
Right. And you have the cartridges to enjoy the gaming?
I do. I have about 10 plastic bins in the basement full of video games from Nintendo forward.
But for a game, you put them all in the same bin, requiring you to dig through to find the ones you want.
But that was half the fun.
Then you just close your eyes, randomly pick one. All right, we're playing Frogger today.
The reason they're in the basement is I emulate. Right, I emulate all those systems, so because it's a space issue. Plus, I have a completionist attitude, and so if I got into collecting the cartridges, I would just that would be my new life, and I don't want to do that. I have too many hobbies as it is.
Comic-Con to Comic-Con, getting cartridge by cartridge.
Are you any good?
As a gamer? No, I'm awful. I'm terrible. I'm really... I don't play online because I don't have the time or the energy or the willingness to compete against 12-year-olds that call me a noob and spend most of my time online teabagging me.
My son was asking me, because the new Mario movie just came out, are you any good, Dad? And I'm like, my skills. You have played with me. You know what are my skills.
I had some pretty tight 7-8 minute runs on Mario Brothers. As in from start to completion, the original Mario Brothers sub 10 minutes.
Wow.
That was the kind of the pinnacle of my gaming expertise.
Which is weird because I have about 10 minutes of attention span, and then I'm done and I move on. I certainly didn't finish it. I certainly didn't finish level 1.
Well,
so is that a flaw that we cannot finish or play for a long time on a game and we're in IT?
I mean, attention span, I would say, certainly is a flaw.
It definitely has been a serious flaw in my career over the years. Yes.
Yeah. I no longer have the patience for this. I think we're done.
Exactly.
I don't think I could quantify the number of meetings in a week that I just go, yeah, you don't need me in this anymore. I gotta go.
We're done.
You haven't asked me a question. I haven't responded to anything. I'm just kind of nodding. Just send me the recording. I won't listen to that either, but at least you could feel like you did something.
Yeah.
I remember the podcast that you said, I don't need to be here. Bye. And he was joking, but you actually disconnected.
Yeah.
We've all been in sales organizations, and this is always the torture week in sales, right? It's always the first couple of weeks in the quarter, which means territory reviews, which means 3 to 4 hour meetings listening to individual sales rep go over their plans. It is the very definition of torture in any organization.
I'm so happy.
But you have. And you've had to go through them.
Horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. I don't ever want to do that again. Look, I'm fine. I will do it again. I don't want to, which means you have to pay me a lot of money to do it.
Right. That's right. There's a premium.
USD. I'm
premium
not
attached.
Canadian loonies or toonies. Right? No ruples.
There's nothing a Timmy's can't solve. That's what I'm saying.
Many things that Timmy's can't solve.
Things Timmy's can't solve.
Although I do like the Timmy bites. Is that what they're called? The little
Timbits.
Timbits. I like the Timbits.
Timbits and double is known worldwide.
Sir, a double is a cheeseburger from In-N-Out.
Oh, it's inappropriate. Double is clearly coffee with 2 cream and 2 sugar.
No. Really?
Yeah. That's correct. That's what a Canadian would ever imagine a double to be.
Yeah, that's fine. But there's like 5 of you in the whole world. So yeah. No, 5 of you can be wrong. It's okay.
Next time that you come back here to Miami, I'm gonna give you a double colada. So you can see
double colada.
Double. A Cuban coffee.
Yeah, get a double, 2 cafecito together.
Yeah, 2 cafecito.
All right.
Yeah,
we'll be in Orlando on next Friday, and then
you'll be able to find your attention span with a whole army of people after 2 cafecitos.
Which reminds me, I did go to India last 2 weeks, and within the first 5 hours of me landing, I had 5 filter coffees inside me.
Holy crap.
And they were good.
Yeah. Did you just run through Indian traffic the rest of the way? Just push the cab? I mean, I will admit, of all the coffee drinks, none of the top 5 exist in our US things. It's Vietnamese, Turkish, Indian, Cuban. I don't even know what the 5th is, but it's probably tea.
Tea, right?
Everything else is so far behind that particular list. And Indian filter coffee there's just something amazing about it.
Yep. It's the effort that goes into it that you have to enjoy. And then you've got the 2 steel cups, right? You have to aerate and you get the bubbles. It's a whole process you got to go through.
No, I don't have to go through. I just get to receive the effort of that.
That's right. You get to enjoy the look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I did find pictures of us last time going to Bukhari, right? Where we essentially had to put a napkin the size of a tablecloth in our with no utensils and the bread the size of the table.
No. There was one set of utensils at the table.
That's true.
Because when on our way there, I said I don't do chicken with my fingers. It's gross.
Chicken with my fingers.
Everybody went, you don't have a choice. They don't have utensils. And I went, oh, nay. They will come up with a set of utensils. Everybody orders, and I said, "Sir, can I have a set of utensils? It bothers me to do it with my fingers." And he went, "Sure, no problem." He sat there and picked greasy chicken apart with your fingers. I ate like a civilized person. And yes, that may be a weakness of mine: inability unwillingness to get my hands dirty.
You got to do as the Romans do.
Conquer other nations. I mean, do keep in mind the Romans effectively stole their religion from everyone else and then forced everyone to worship their religion.
Right, exactly. Do that.
They didn't exactly go along to get along.
Go along to get along. That wasn't their fiat.
No. Theirs was when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and Rome was the empire. It was everywhere.
That's right. Whenever you hit land, you've visited Rome.
Yes, but sir, this is Londonum. No, that's Rome now. Do as we do.
Right.
But we're Gaulish. That's Rome now. Do as we do. I think we misinterpreted that saying for a very, very long time.
I see.
Right. So call me Caesar. Give me my silverware.
Right. Nice. So the trip to India did make me think about some serious impacts of my personality and skill set over my career. Now, in fairness, a good portion of the serious flaws I found and discovered in my trip wasn't necessarily work related, but I did find out very quickly that I have no ability to either throw or bat in any sense of the cricket entertainment. I did enjoy watching others who are clearly 20 years younger than me on average play the game. But I hit nothing, and anything I threw wasn't even close to the batter.
Hey, you know, that happens.
I walked away with shame.
Yeah, I'm similarly afflicted. I don't play team sports. I refuse. I do not. The only thing I'll kind of play a team sport in is volleyball, and I'm not sure I can do it anymore. I don't have my ankles and knees are toast from a motorcycle accident, so I haven't played in years and years. But that's the only kind of rough team sport I could play. I cannot play any other team sport.
There's no designated server in volleyball?
No, everybody takes it. I was good at volleyball, and volleyball is it's such a small and fast sport that it doesn't bother me. When I was a child, I was very small, and I tended to be bullied a lot. And any sport that I played, I was always undersized for my age, which made it. I've never been like Mr. Coordination anyhow, so it wasn't like I was naturally gifted. And so I was always made to feel like I was letting the team down, and it created this thing in my psyche that I just don't do team sports.
But you're willing to watch sports.
I take a book with me, but yeah, I'm willing to watch sports.
So you're willing to be in the same stadium as where a sport is being played.
That is correct. Literally, I will not go to a stadium without a book, and I have argued with security that my Kindle is not an iPad and therefore should be allowed in, and I almost always win.
You actually show them.
Is there a difference? Wait,
yeah, because a lot of sporting stadiums don't let you take an iPad,
right, for recording.
It's distracting to everybody else.
Yeah.
But and the recording function, and the Kindle has neither of those flaws. But there was one time I'm sitting on first baseline, front row, just past first base, at a Angels stadium, when they were still kind of good, and I believe it was Kansas City that was playing, and Kenny Rogers was the pitcher for that game, and it was his last ever game that he would pitch. He was retiring afterwards. I'm paying no attention. I'm reading my book, and all of a sudden there is a ball attached to a hand, right, literally in between the pages, like on my book, and I look up, and there's Kenny Rogers handing me his warm-up ball so I could give it to my 4-year-old daughter, who was scared of the big bearded man. And I was to say I was embarrassed would probably be an understatement.
Were you on the big screen?
No, I mean, maybe it was, but it was warm-up.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That would have been way more embarrassing in the middle of a game.
I was just embarrassing because I felt it was disrespectful. That I not only did I not watch them warm up in his last game ever, but I didn't even notice when he walked up and tried to talk to my daughter. I was engrossed in my book.
Apparently, you were engrossed in the text.
There, for those that are watching, there were 3 of us. My wife was paying attention. It was just me that was oblivious.
So, have you highlighted a serious flaw to which you've encountered through your career? Attention span.
Yeah, I get bored easy.
Yeah.
And it is very specifically getting bored easy. You either have 100% of my attention or less than 5% of my attention, and generally it's 0. I don't have any other way, right? I've learned to deal with kind of that boredom in a few ways. One is, if I'm not interested in a job, I'll leave. Right? I'm not likely. It's rare nowadays to find a place where I'm going to be for the next 10 or 15 years, simply because how are you going to continue to grow at a pace that keeps me interested, excited, and entertained for that long? Mm-hmm. There are certainly some roles, but it's rare. I liked Hitachi enough that I probably would have stayed for 10 or 15 years. Right? I liked the work that we were doing. But I left the last place, the place in between Hitachi and where I'm at now, because I wasn't getting anything done and it was boring. Right? I felt like I was shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic.
Right.
Not that it was sinking, but just that it was pointless.
Right. You weren't actually moving, and the ship wasn't moving.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
My attention span problem / serious issue has been true in my career since day one, still true today. I have not overcome it. I may have been able to feign it's less of an impact because I know how important it is and how people might perceive it. But for the most part, it still exists. So for the most part, if I'm in an hour virtual meeting, you have me for about 10 minutes, unless I'm the one talking, right? Unless I'm the one presenting something, or you've asked me a question specifically, you'll have my attention.
Sure.
But for the most part, I'm on different tabs.
Yeah.
I'm hearing you, but I'm probably not seeing you.
Yeah. The worst for me is two people spend all the time talking, and then someone goes, "Hey Howard, what do you think?" I don't know. You just spent 20 minutes talking about crap that has no real relevance to me. I don't know how to respond to that.
Right.
But you can't say that in a meeting. It's not a good look.
No. No.
So I have learned to DVR. Do you remember like early TiVo? You would
yeah.
DVR something, and then commercial would come, and you'd hit the button, and it would overshoot, and then you'd go back. You could snap back 30 seconds. Well, I've learned how to snap back 30 seconds. So I can kind of replay, okay, this is it's still in buffer. And then
what was the context? Yeah, let me see if I can have an opinion.
Yep.
Do you filibuster until such time as you remember?
No, because it takes less than 2 seconds, or I don't bother.
So it's not like a 30-second experience where you've have to start a conversation and and ah your way through remembering, and then that's right.
Not generally. The other one that I'm bad at is I can't remember names. Names are very hard for me.
Yeah.
I have some tricks that I use, but they're not. But it's still not easy. In the same way, like I've learned to compensate in many ways for the attention span. But the big one I see in others that I'd really love to cure is resistance to change. That's probably the most dangerous one. Attention span can be frustrating, and you have to like you have to accept it as a flaw, and I think you have to learn how to compensate so that you're not diminishing other people, because it can diminish other people. It can be insulting. It can be whatever. But resistance to change is so limiting to you as an individual that's one that needs to go away. And I'm seeing a lot of it, an enormous amount of it, followed by hubris. Right. Kind of the I know and everyone else is wrong kind of crap that we see a lot.
So let's take one at a time. And I do want to address the first one, even though it seems the weakest. It happens so frequently to me, which is remembering names. It is potentially worse than my inattention. And I think the three of us see this more frequently than others might, because we speak a lot. And they may have come up to you after the fact in a session, and you had a 5-minute chat. And then 3 years from then, you see them at another conference. You kind of recognize their face, but they absolutely know you. Oh, hi, Paul. How are you doing? Remember we talked to XY conference, XY city, XY years ago? I have no idea who this person is. Not sure I even remember the conversation, let alone the person, let alone where they work, let alone any other context.
Yeah.
So it's bad.
What I always do is I say, I'm sorry, I do a lot of these. What did we talk about?
Right.
Yeah.
Then I can generally remember the conversation. Then I can remember the person.
Right.
Right. But if
I remember the face, but the name, like you said, for me is very difficult. Like you said, can you give me a hint of what we were talking about? Because like, if it was 3 years ago, like my wife tell me that I don't remember what I eat for breakfast. So like probably like
right.
It's funny. I used to have people memorized by their tickets. Back when I was a sysadmin and an engineer. Somebody be like, "Hey, do you remember me?" No, I have no idea. Like, you run into them at the cafeteria or whatever. No, I have no idea who you are.
Yeah. What problem did you have?
Well, no, I work on the 5th floor and blah blah blah. Oh, right. You're the blah blah blah. Outlook wouldn't open, and then bad search bar installed or whatever. It's been a long time since I've been a sysadmin. Right, so end user, like I haven't done end user support in a long time, but I used to. That's how I used to have them all memorized.
Right.
Matter of fact, my still to this day, my single favorite ticket. I got to be known for the guy who would fix the stuff that everybody else couldn't figure out.
Right.
And so I'm at WellPoint. I'm in their Woodland Hills office, which had like 1,300 people in it. It's massive. And they've been dealing with this one user for a week. And I'm not on the end user support team at this point. I'm managing the data center, but I have a reputation. So a couple guys come up and they're kind of laughing and hey, Howard, we need you to come check something out. I'm like, okay. Let me pull up the ticket, and I get into the ticket and I look at it and I'm like, so the user is concerned that there's a recording device installed in their computer because every now and again it types something that someone says. And they went, yep. And the ticket's been open for like a week. Why have you left the ticket open for like a week? And they're like, because we can't solve the problem. And I'm like, I'm willing to bet I can have it solved before lunch. If I do, you buy lunch. Yeah, absolutely. If I don't, I'll buy both of you lunch.
Nice.
You can pick the location, but I get to pick if I win.
Right.
No problem. So we go upstairs. I sit down. I go, show me the problem. She shows exactly the problem. I go, okay, cool. Gentlemen, let's go to lunch. And they're like, we haven't solved it yet. I reached behind the computer. I unplugged the microphone and I turned off accessibility. Microsoft in that version of Office had added a brand new feature, which was text to speech.
Right.
That you turned on in accessibility. And the company had distributed headsets for everyone as part of a new voice over IP rollout that never actually happened. The headset was plugged in, and then she dropped the headset behind the computer
because she never used it. And so the microphone kept picking things up, but it wasn't faced in the right direction, so it only picked things up every once in a while. Right.
And as soon as I saw what it was doing, I'm like, oh yeah, there's some text to speech going on here. I found that, turned it off, went, okay, that means there's a microphone. Found the microphone and unplugged it, and we were off to lunch. And they did not make that bet again. Sushi in San Fernando Valley is very expensive, and I have a sumo wrestler's appetite for sushi. So
sumo. And you remember their names?
No, I just remember.
You remember the restaurant that you went to eat?
It is now closed. I think oh wow, that's bad. I think it was called Toro. There were a lot of good sushi restaurants in the San Fernando Valley, so I stopped remembering all of them. Matter of fact, it was almost harder to find a bad sushi restaurant than it was to find a good sushi restaurant.
Right.
Not a bad thing to have. Although I will say one of my favorites is in Toronto, over by the hotel that I want to say the Westin. There's this little kind of like sidewalk alley that I walked to 2 or 3 times. Really good. Little tiny place. I went often enough they started to recognize me, and no one recognized me in Toronto.
You look like every other Canadian.
Really good.
Was it in the winter? Your beard would have been normal.
Well, I mean, I went there every time I was in Toronto. So.
I see.
Yeah. The only time I didn't was the one time I stayed way the heck out of the city, like an idiot.
Like near the airport?
Oh, it was the first time I went, and I didn't understand the corporate travel policy. So the hotel that I got was in the middle of BFE.
I see.
And my then supervisor said, "What are you doing? Don't do that again." We'll have to approve whatever.
Right.
And then I stayed at One Kings until they didn't have a room, and then I stayed at the Westin.
Right.
I actually liked the Westin a little better.
Until you learned that Marriott Loyalty was your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that was remembering people. The inability to change or resistance to change. It's not a flaw of yours, but you've certainly seen it in others. Yeah. Earlier in their career, late in their career, is it a current problem now?
Oh, I see it now. I see it now, and it's worse now than I think it may have ever been. The rate of change is higher than it's ever been, both kind of within the technology space and then just within the world in general. and I'm seeing it in huge ways, right? I was talking to a customer this morning, and they're talking about big telecom, and they have a system for big telco. It doesn't matter what it is, but one of the pieces of it is they help the customer update their NOC. Right. The most critical piece for any telco is the NOC, goes without saying, but the same could be said for all of us, right? Our most critical component is our NOC. And the NOC manager hears kind of the new way of thinking, right? Network as a service, as an example. And then immediately, and this person, I don't mean NOC manager as in they're a management level person. I mean NOC manager as in they're likely a VP.
Right.
And they almost immediately go, what is that? What do I do? What's my new job? Right. Well, come on, dude. Like, you run it now. If you step up and learn a few things, you'll continue to run it in the future.
Right.
Like, the fear-based response blows my mind. No one's talking about replacing your job, but you are going to be asked to learn some new things.
Right.
You are going to, your cheese will be moved. Do you want to go find the new cheese, or do you just want to, wither and die in the corner? In which case, you'll be replaced before the sun sets.
Right. So you think this is an executive problem and an individual contributor problem and a middle management problem?
Absolutely. And I think it's made much worse because as a CIO, as an example, we make 50 decisions a week that impact the whole of technology. How many times do we all consider the impact that has on the leadership personalities underneath us? Right. I would argue the further you get away from the CIO, the more you're used to it. Not that that's a good thing or necessarily a bad thing. And the better you are at rolling with the punches, right? The number of engineers that roll with the punches per capita seems to be far higher than the number of mid-level managers that roll with the punches. Like, mid-level management doesn't seem to roll with the punches at all.
Now, is that because there's been so many changes so frequently in the last decade that they're numb to change, and therefore rolling with it just means an assumption that another change is coming in 2 months, so why does it really matter?
Could be.
Yeah, indifference, I guess, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, like a sense of apathy. It very well could be. At the same time, if that's the case, it absolutely makes them unable to recognize change that is important. Right? Like, it's and if that's where you're at, right? If where you are listening to this is, I get what you're saying, Howard, but ultimately, I'm going to have a new boss in 2 weeks,
right,
or 2 months, or a year, and all I really have to do is tread water until the new person comes, and then I don't have to worry about this change, so I don't have to change. And every time I've changed, they've replaced the person or countermanded the order 2 months later, so it doesn't really matter. While that may be true, then the skill you must develop is the ability to recognize when the winds themselves are changing. Right? Forget about who's manning the helm at hour to hour. When the winds change, it doesn't matter what you want the ship to do. The ship is moving.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
It's the trend line there, not the individual change.
Correct. And that's what I see the miss. I see those same people that have the first attitude also completely miss the trend line. And they're dismissive of everything, right? They're dismissive of cloud. They're dismissive of NoSQL databases. They're dismissive of anything that's as a service. They're dismissing of anything that's a software replacement for what we did with hardware. They're just dismissive of all of it. They're dismissive of Agile, as an example. Right? Agile doesn't work. Right? The way we've always done it this way, and it's always worked. No, it hasn't always worked. Matter of fact, it almost never works. That doesn't mean Agile works every time. Right? But it doesn't mean that what you do today works. And it's that level of arrogance and that level of hubris that I see pushing in an awful lot more.
And there's a lot of circumstances in that example where Agile is not appropriate.
Correct. I was on vacation. I met with a friend that I haven't seen in years. He lives in Virginia, and he works for government agency or government funded institution. Doesn't really matter for the purpose of this conversation. And they've gone 100% Agile across the organization.
For anything and everything.
Wow. And he is on a team of 2 that manages 1 product, and that's what they're responsible for. And he's like, it's ridiculous. Before, if the 2 of us went to lunch and one of us had a good idea, we would just go back to our desk and implement it, and good to go.
Right.
Now I have to have a stand up. I have to do a sprint. I have to define it. We have to do a regression. We have to do a needs analysis. We have to do a post analysis. Like the amount of overhead necessary means where before we got 50 changes done a year each, we're now going to get 4 done.
Right.
And no one, everybody knew they could, but no one thought if they should.
Right. I certainly don't want Agile to be the process of sending somebody to moon. Right. I don't want a mid-level production release in my rocket. I want it fully baked, fully qualified before it's ready to be sent away.
If you look at the problems we had during the moon landing, I'm not sure that it wasn't half baked. I'm not sure that wasn't the first implementation of Agile ever.
Possibly. But back to serious flaws. What's interesting, at least how I think is interesting, the serious flaw of resistance to change, I had the opposite effect. If anything, I changed too much in my earlier career. I was king of change. I loved introducing new process, new org changes, new ways of doing things, new leadership styles. And that was detrimental to my leadership, implementing so much change so quickly, where the team under me just didn't know where my head was at, didn't know what was important, didn't know where to spend their time, didn't know what reporting was realistic or not. And what I learned over time to temper that was to hold back the change that was unnecessary and push the change that was necessary. And even if change was coming from on high through me to my team, I still filtered out what I thought was less important to what I thought was important, so that the only change we implemented were the highest priority changes. That took decades of appreciation, but I'm still pro change versus anti change, and maybe still too much on the pro change side. But I know that it was 100% change 100% of the time in my earlier years.
Yeah, it was the same. I will say one of the things that you said makes me bring up kind of another flaw, and we probably all go through it at some point, to some degree, right? Mostly early in our management career, but too many people seem to think the job of management is to say yes to those above and no to those below, when the exact opposite is true.
Right.
It's to say no to those above and yes to those below.
Right.
Can you help me with this? Yes. Can we do this? No. Right? Because if you don't, if all you are is a mouthpiece for those above you, you're completely unnecessary.
Right.
Right? Because it's just a straight path. If you never say no to those above you, and by that, by which I mean you don't say no a lot, you're useless. You're completely and utterly useless. And if all you do is say no to those below you, you're especially useless and frustrating. The job is to say no to those above you, and that could be from the board all the way down to a second level manager. Your job is to say no.
Right.
You say no to the board. No, that's not reasonable. This is why it's not reasonable. This is why we're not going to do that. I see where you're going with it, and let's talk about whether the directionality has merit and if we need to do something there. But no.
The irony is that over years, that promotability came from the people who said yes, right? That rolled up their sleeves, figured it out, got it done at the detriment of the company or at the detriment of their team. They had the highest turnover, but they still said yes to the executives, and the executives said, "You're ready for a promotion." I'm not saying that was right, but time and time again, it happened.
Yeah. I figured out the no thing relatively early, and it took a while to kind of overcome it. But eventually you get enough experience and gravitas that you carry that the no is a comfort, and you start to get promoted because of the no. And when you don't, you can almost always readily identify the bad leader that's in the way.
Right.
Who's not leading. They're just terrified because they're just another former middle manager that never understood the job and continue to fail up.
Yeah. And the good leaders give two answers. It's no, I won't do that, but I will do this.
Correct.
Versus just no. Okay, let's talk about the last one you brought up, because I think it's the most interesting. The hubris. right? I know all, and therefore all my decisions are correct. Was that a flaw of yours that you had that you've overcome, or somebody else has that you've witnessed them overcome?
It's one I see on the daily, and it's one that I hope I don't have anymore.
Hmm.
But I'm sure I have some of it. Right? I mean, I absolutely have it when it comes to food. I know I am right when it comes to food. There's no way. I went to sushi with you, sir. I know the delta. The double thing, I know I'm 100% right on.
Out of the gate.
Out of the gate. But it's one I see constantly, right? I constantly see, no, you're wrong. Okay, well, when was the last time you were a buyer? Well, I've only ever been in marketing, so never then.
So never then. Oh, you've been at this company 30 years and you've never had any other job? That's interesting.
Yeah, or what we see is this. Yeah, of course that's what you see, because you only see the results of a sale post-sale.
Right.
So you've already got confirmation bias working in your favor. Is that really the direction that you want? I'm happy you want to play in your confirmation bias. It's fine. But I don't think you're going to get the result that you want. Do you want to do it a different way? No.
Right.
Okie dokie. And then I immediately tell my CEO I won't be involved in this project.
Well, how do you instill objectivity? Not in others, because I'm not sure that's even possible. But how do you instill objectivity in yourself in order to get over this assumption that you're right, that your experience and expertise is the only thing you need?
I try to assume that I'm wrong, and then when I'm pretty sure I'm right, and others have insisted that I'm wrong, I then double check. I try to validate by consuming other outside sources, be it one or many. I think I've told the story before where I moved to Colorado, chatting with someone on Reddit, and I was talking about Colorado being purple and a newly purple state. To which they said, "You're an idiot. We've had Democrat governors. Go look it up." And I went, "Oh, okay. Okay. I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong, but okay." First off, the way we do that in the States, the state of your color is not remotely dependent on what you've had for local leadership, but rather how you voted in presidential elections.
Okay.
Up until Obama, Colorado had voted red almost universally.
Interesting.
Thus a red state. When Obama showed up, they switched to purple because they voted for Obama twice. Anyhow, turns out there's a guy who wrote a college textbook on the geopolitics of Colorado because it is so incredibly fascinating how Colorado works. And historically, until about 2006, no Democrat that ran for a major ticket within the state of Colorado would have qualified as a Democrat in another state.
Interesting.
Because Colorado is incredibly fiscally conservative, and they would simply be another form of Republican in any other state, but they ran as the opposition, and it was purely on social issues.
Right.
Even those were relatively conservative comparatively, compared to some place like California. But so I read the entire college textbook just so I could respond to somebody I never met on Reddit and go, actually, I wasn't completely full of crap, but now I know a whole ton more about the situation.
Right.
So I consume a lot, and I consume a lot from wild and various and varied sources, so that I can try to maintain some level of critical thought about a topic and not just fall into confirmation bias or the hive mind.
Mm-hmm.
It does, of course, happen, and I berate myself internally every time I find it, but I really try hard to not do that. I try hard to not be arrogant, and I try really hard not to ever be the smartest person in the room.
I also think the action of apologizing is an effective way to teach your mind not to do it again, right? So you go through the process where somebody disagrees with you, you do the research, they end up being right. The action of you publicly saying, "Yep, I was wrong. You were right. Apologize. I was not in tune to the knowledge. This is your win." That action actually creates this new engine in your mind, so that when you do have another opinion, you think to yourself, "Do I want to go through the process of proving myself wrong again? Because that didn't feel that good."
Well, Well, it's also, I think part of the reason that that it's a problem, and I'm with you, right?
Yeah.
Is we seem to have this idea that apologizing is admitting that you're wrong is somehow bad.
Right.
Nothing is further from the truth. Saying I don't know, there's nothing wrong with that. Just say I don't know.
Right.
Right. And then just assume the other person always has good intentions. That's the other advice I would give to people. Right. A lot of the times we get wrapped around the axle on things, and a lot of it comes from a poor assumption that the other person isn't coming from a good place. And if you assume the other person comes from a good place, you can generally find your way through just about anything.
Right.
And yeah, always be willing to apologize. Always be willing to admit that you're wrong. It doesn't actually hurt you.
And I've had to come to grips and discuss openly with anybody who ever asks that the CTO role, the CIO role isn't the top technologist, right? The definition of a CTO isn't knowing more than everyone else, either deeply or broadly. The CTO is an executive role, not a practitioner knowledge role. In other words, there's a very big difference between the chief architect and the chief technologist.
Yep.
Knowing that's true, when I do something like an AMA, Epithian, where we do like a tech battle, I'm very clear that I start the conversation saying, this is not a stump the chump, right? You are going to win by asking me questions I clearly don't know. So let's level set that now. The goal here isn't to prove that you're smarter than me. I already know you're smarter than me. Right? You already have that. You win. We don't have to go through that. So let's spend our time in the AMA talking about things that you don't know that I might be able to provide some interesting, objective opinion, advice, perspective on. That's where we should spend our time.
Yeah.
And it's made the AMAs differently better.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see that. And yeah, there's a lot of people that seem to think that even that the CIO or the CTO or whatever is useless because they don't know the technology as well as everyone else.
Right.
And I always find that humorous. I had somebody tell me that, and I just laughed at them. I openly laughed. I'm like, so what you're telling me is you don't understand the role of the CIO. Do you want to do that someday? Oh yeah, I could do that now. No, you can't do that now.
That's right.
Because you somehow think that it's technical. And you know that person, if put in a leadership position, would lead as though they were the worker.
Right.
Right. Which is exactly the opposite of how, like, I made that mistake early on. I absolutely did. I was a high performer. I got promoted. I had run teams before I got promoted. And I expected everyone to be as knowledgeable or as smart or as willing to do blah, 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 as committed as whatever I was. I expected everyone to, like, that was the bottom line. That was the baseline, right? The low watermark that I expected everyone to hit. Right. And of course, in some way, nearly everyone failed.
Yeah, they never met your expectations.
Correct, because my expectations were based off the mirror that only existed within my head. Let's be honest. I was young and stupid at the time. I'm just older and stupid. I'm not necessarily smart now. But everyone's destined to fail at that point. Right. Because I didn't understand the role that I was in. It was impossible for me to lead people that were doing the job that I had just left. It was the most amazing thing. And when I realized what I was doing wrong, and when I really thought about it, it totally changed the role for me. And I've had to do that at every step, right? Every step up the ladder, it changes the expectation, it changes the role, it changes the focus, but it doesn't change how you lead if you lead well.
Right. Agreed. As long as you have that, as long as you turn that crank, right? Yep. Where I am now a leader of people, I am now not the practitioner of work.
Correct. And my job isn't to grade their work. It's really not.
Absolutely not.
Or their methods or anything else. My job is to help them be the best they can be.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's right.
Right. I have other things that I'm responsible for, but when it comes to those people that I lead, that's my job.
Right. Carlos, we talked about a lot of serious flaws here.
But I think that the change is the one that takes us the most. because it's difficult for people to change their way. If I knew something in technology, it defined me. I was a COBOL programmer, I was a Fortran programmer, and I'm using those all examples because those were people skill set that for a while they were the biggest thing. Then change. Now my identity that was attached to that, I need to learn not to. So I had to change that. So that make a big difference.
Mhm.
And you said something, Howard, that is very important that we have talked about a lot in different ways, and is that leading has nothing to do with your technical acumen or technical expertise. I think we should launch like a leadership program or something uh, to teach people something like that. But yeah, that was a very good conversation. I'm always like a fly on the wall, learning, understanding, applying. Um, and you that are listening, make sure that you take the time, pause the video when you hear something, jot it down, share it with your team, share with others. Because I think that at the end of the day, the idea is how we can grow, change, and implement for the future. My friends, make sure that you share, you subscribe. We'll see you on our next video.